In just 3 years, from 1943 to 1946, a trio of titans, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Winston Churchill, and Joseph Stalin, reshaped the post-war world. Their alliance, born of necessity, concealed simmering tensions, since each man aimed to impose his own vision of the global order. Through the Tehran, Yalta, and Potsdam Conferences, they redrew borders, upended nations, and unwittingly planted the seeds of a new, deadly rivalry that would grip the world for decades. Dark words from Winston Churchill about an Iron Curtain soon echoed across the globe, revealing how one conflict's end fueled another's beginning. In that brief historical window, entire regions were recast, laying the groundwork for an ideological clash poised to eclipse all past wars. How did these leaders, each with distinct plans, manage to shape a worldwide map for lasting peace? What drove them, and at what cost? And where did they fail? By late 1943, the Allies had scored significant victories, yet still faced the Nazi war machine at its fiercest. In North Africa, Axis forces surrendered in May, clearing the way for the invasion of Sicily that July. With the island secured by mid-August, Allied troops landed in mainland Italy that September. Although Mussolini had been disposed and jailed, Germany held firm in southern and central Italy, maintaining a strong line along the Winter Line, including the Gustav Line near Monte Cassino, far from the Gothic Line, which would come into play in 1944. Meanwhile, on the Eastern Front, the Red Army seized momentum after its triumph at Stalingrad and began retaking territory. That summer, Soviet forces repelled Germany's last major offensive at Kursk and pushed onward through Ukraine, dealing severe blows to the Wehrmacht. In this setting, Allied leaders chose Tehran in Iran for their first face-to-face meeting because it lay close to Soviet territory and, although loosely under Allied control, still provided relative security. Churchill, charismatic and combative, arrived with crates of cigars and whiskey, while President Roosevelt, though physically waning, strove to appear strong and upbeat. Stalin watched his counterparts with cool calculation, fully aware of his leverage thanks to Soviet gains on the Eastern Front. He strongly pressed for the immediate opening of a second front in Western Europe.
Did you know that most people who watch our documentaries aren't subscribed yet? If you enjoy animated maps and history, join our community. Leave a like and subscribe so you never miss the next episodes.
The Teheran Conference marked a turning point in Allied collaboration. The Big Three convened face-to-face to orchestrate a global strategy aimed at crushing Nazi Germany. At the heart of their plans lay Operation Overlord, the long-anticipated invasion of France, slated for mid-1944. In return, Stalin pledged to launch a major offensive in the east, coordinating with the Western Allies to keep German forces split between two fronts. Military matters were not the only concern. The Allies agreed to support Tito's partisans in Yugoslavia, reaffirmed Iran's post-war sovereignty, and weighed Turkey's potential entry against the Axis. They also floated ideas for occupying or carving up Germany to prevent a future resurgence. One of the most contentious issues was Poland's borders. Stalin demanded the Curzon Line in the east, formally annexing territories the USSR had seized in 1939, and proposed compensating Poland with German lands, stretching to what would become the Oder-Neisse line. Roosevelt and Churchill did not formally endorse this shift, but refrained from rejecting it, setting the stage for drastic changes in Central Europe. Yet the fragility of Allied unity emerged during a private dinner after the second plenary session. Stalin suggested executing 50,000 German officers to prevent the reformation of a potent German army. Horrified, Churchill declared Britain would never condone such slaughter. He would sooner face a firing squad himself. A misplaced joke from Roosevelt, compounded by his son Elliot's agreement, infuriated Churchill, who stormed out in outrage. Though united by a common foe, Tehran revealed profound, near irreconcilable rifts over how to remake Europe once victory drew near. By early 1945, Nazi Germany appeared on the verge of collapse. Franklin D. Roosevelt, Winston Churchill, and Joseph Stalin gathered at Yalta, on Crimea's southern coast, in the Levadia Palace, once the summer home of Tsar Nicholas II. Though palm trees and sea breezes surrounded them, the decisions made here would shape Europe for decades. Their immediate focus was Germany. The Allies agreed on 4 occupation zones: American, British, French, and Soviet, with Berlin likewise divided. Demilitarization and denazification were mandatory policies. War reparations proved contentious. They formed a new commission to decide how much Germany would pay, especially to the war-ravaged Soviet Union. Another core topic was establishing the United Nations, designed to prevent future global conflicts. Building on earlier ideas, the leaders solidified a Security Council with 5 permanent members, each wielding veto power, a system with far-reaching consequences. Lauded as an Allied triumph, Yalta nevertheless revealed each leader's unique post-war vision. Beneath polite exteriors, the seeds of conflict had already taken root. No issue at Yalta proved more divisive than Poland. Stalin, as at Tehran, insisted on recognizing the Curzon Line as the eastern boundary, legitimizing Soviet authority over lands seized in 1939. In exchange, Poland would absorb parts of eastern Germany, shifting its border to the Oder-Neisse line. Churchill and Roosevelt, reluctant to provoke Stalin, consented as long as free elections took place in Poland and elsewhere, an assurance swiftly undermined by the rise of pro-communist regimes across Eastern Europe. The Declaration on Liberated Europe aimed to guarantee self-determination, but its vagueness granted Stalin wide latitude. Meanwhile, plans to try Nazi war criminals gained momentum, foreshadowing the Nuremberg trials. In a secret protocol, Stalin promised to declare war on Japan within 3 months of Germany's surrender. In return, he obtained southern Sakhalin, the Kurils, and influence in Manchuria, redefining Asia's map. Though Yalta outwardly signaled Allied cooperation, distrust deepened. Churchill feared Soviet expansionism, Roosevelt's health was waning, and Stalin, emboldened by the Red Army's momentum, felt unstoppable. These precarious agreements lit the fuse for an East-West rift even before the World War ended. Barely 2 months after Yalta, the world was shaken by President Roosevelt's death on April 12, 1945, in Warm Springs, Georgia, a quiet locale in the American Southeast. Having led the nation through the Great Depression and nearly all of World War II, FDR had become an iconic figure at home and abroad. With his passing, Vice President Harry S. Truman, less seasoned in high-stakes diplomacy, assumed the role of commander-in-chief. His tougher stance toward Stalin significantly influenced the upcoming Potsdam Conference and the post-war landscape. In July 1945, after Nazi Germany's surrender, Winston Churchill suffered a dramatic electoral defeat to Clement Attlee. Churchill did attend the start of the Potsdam Conference, which opened on July 17, but he was compelled to return to London on July 26, when the election results confirmed a Labour victory. In his place, Attlee took over negotiations for the second phase of the meeting. Only Joseph Stalin remained from the original Big Three of Tehran and Yalta, now joined by Harry S. Truman and Attlee in Potsdam, near Berlin, within the Soviet occupation zone. Here, they formally confirmed Germany's division into 4 sectors, as well as Berlin's partition under the Allied Control Council. Fierce debates erupted over reparations. The USSR demanded heavy compensation from Eastern Germany, while the Western Allies, mindful of Versailles, urged restraint. Deciding Poland's western boundary was crucial. By provisionally approving the Oder-Neisse line, Silesia, Pomerania, and large parts of East Prussia passed to Poland, forcing millions of Germans from their homes. Königsberg, later Kaliningrad, went to the USSR, redrawing Central Europe. The Foreign Ministers' Council was formed to prepare peace treaties with Italy, Bulgaria, Romania, Hungary, and Finland, and to devise a final plan for Germany. Austria remained occupied and administered separately. During Potsdam, Truman received news of the stunning success of the atomic bomb test at Los Alamos, stifling his resolve. The conference concluded with the Potsdam Declaration, delivering Japan an ultimatum of conditional surrender or prompt and utter destruction. After Potsdam, Central and Eastern Europe underwent sweeping transformations. Under Allied administration, Germany would split into West Germany, American, British, and French zones, and East Germany, Soviet zone. Berlin, lying deep in Soviet-held territory, remained divided, its western sectors an island inside East Germany. Having surrendered its eastern lands to the USSR, Poland gained Silesia, Pomerania, and parts of East Prussia under the Oder-Neisse deal, expelling millions of Germans. Farther north, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania stayed under Soviet rule. As the Foreign Ministers' Council negotiated with the Axis's former partners, Austria, though previously annexed, remained occupied separately, awaiting restored independence. Simultaneously, the Allies advanced war crimes proceedings, culminating at Nuremberg. In mere months, borders shifted, populations were displaced, and Europe's structure was recast. These upheavals paved the way for decades of East-West rivalry. While Europe was carved into occupation zones, Asia, too, faced sweeping post-war realignments. The Soviet Union annexed southern Sakhalin and the Kuril Islands from Japan, fulfilling Yalta's terms. Korea was split along the 38th parallel, entrenching a permanent rift between a Soviet-backed north and a US-supported south. In China, Soviet troops withdrew from Manchuria, leaving a vacuum that reignited civil war. Meanwhile, European efforts to reclaim Indochina and the Dutch East Indies sparked fierce independence movements. These redrawings sowed the seeds of future conflicts, from the Korean War to anti-colonial revolutions. Within a year of Potsdam, on March 5, 1946, Winston Churchill visited Fulton, Missouri, and delivered a speech that shattered any illusions of Allied unity. From Stettin in the Baltic to Trieste in the Adriatic, an Iron Curtain has descended across the continent, he declared. This dramatic proclamation publicly affirmed the rift between the Western democracies and the Soviet-dominated East. Churchill's words reverberated worldwide. By defining the Soviet bloc as a cordoned-off realm, he effectively codified the East-West divide. Although tensions had been simmering over Poland, occupation zones, and the absence of free elections in the East, this moment made the fault line undeniable. The era of Allied cooperation ended, yielding a bipolar world soon governed by nuclear arsenals and ideological battles. Churchill's Iron Curtain speech exposed just how fragile that peace really was. If you enjoyed this historical journey, please like, share, subscribe, and ring the notification bell to stay connected with more stories that shaped our modern world and beyond.